What's going on, guys? It's Snoo603 from Shoosty Bang, and joining me today is Fake Thriller.
Also from Shoosty Bang.
Also, but he's kind of like that. He's kind of like a minion or an intern, if you will. Which is
Yosamasa.
So today we want to talk about Battlefield 4. As I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, there has been a ton of information and footage, specifically from Jack Frags. Actually, he's been killing it lately, getting out gameplay. But a lot's been coming out about Battlefield 4 from Gamescom, which actually just wrapped up the other day. And there's a lot to process. But one of the things that I'm kind of thinking on the outskirts of here is map design. We got to see a lot of Paracel Storm, I believe is the name of it. All of a sudden, I don't feel confident about that name.
No, that's right. That's right.
Okay. So we saw a lot of gameplay of Obliteration on Paracel Storm. That's the one that really stuck out to me. And from everything I could tell, the map design actually looks pretty good. I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of Wake Island in that there's very little cover. It's in a tropical, island setting kind of. So there's not a whole lot of vertical gameplay. It's relatively wide open, and it's going to involve a lot of vehicles. But there's no real choke points everywhere because it's kind of set up like a conquest map where the whole place is wide open.
Yeah, it's a traditional island shape as opposed to Wake Island from Battlefield 3, where that was just like long strips. But
yeah, it's like a big horseshoe.
Right. But Paracel Storm is like just a regular island just jutting up out of the sea.
Exactly. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, one of the things that kind of got to me, but at the same time I really enjoyed, I felt like DICE hit the nail right on the head and then missed the mark completely, was the map design on some maps in Battlefield 3. So, specifically what I'm talking about is say Rush on Operation Riverside, where the last set of MCOMs just so decidedly favors the defending team. And then Grand Bazaar, Rush, again. You think, A is actually really easy to get to, but if you take A, the low-hanging fruit, the easy one to get, then B is, really, really difficult to get. And then same thing with, Conquest and Operation Metro. It's a fun map, and it's hectic as all get out, but there's literally is only one way to get through, and you could technically say there's three ways, because, you're going through the Metro, and you can run up the middle, or you can run down, one of the locker room on one side. But, for the most part, you're out in the open the whole way, from end to end. One of the ideas, actually, that someone had talked about on Reddit one day was maybe if they added playable area above it. So that'd be kind of cool. But
I was actually thinking about that, and this ties in well with what you're talking about. If you make these designs too linear, it creates almost stagnant gameplay that's just repeated over and over again.
Exactly.
But I think the big potential that they have to avoid that from happening is with Levolution. And we've only seen a few bits and pieces of what Levolution is actually going to be, and obviously buildings falling down and stuff like that. But I think it would be sweet to have major, not necessarily the building falling down, but remember the part in the early footage we saw where they take out the pillars underneath that tank and then the tank falls down into the parking garage, and then that's a ramp up to the street now.
Right, so it kind of blocks off a street, which you could probably stick it around on the outside edge of the hole, but now you've added a whole new level of travel, lane to travel.
Right.
By opening up that street.
So I'm thinking, especially where Metro is most likely coming back in whichever expansion, a good way to do Levolution on that map specifically would be to have travelable terrain on surface level above the metro station and everything, and then it would be the job of the initial attackers to blow open a hole to allow their surface level teammates to come in, or eventually spawn and then come in on by themselves. But I think that's the way I really want to see Levolution take place in the Battlefield 4 maps.
Right. Essentially, to sum that up, and more importantly, sum up my thoughts I was trying to get out, is I like the idea of what Levolution is going to give us, because, again, one of the problems we had in Battlefield 3 was maps were too linear. The destruction didn't really allow you to create that many different avenues to get from point A to point B, regardless of what game type you were playing, really. Specifically to Rush, though. With Levolution, that could change everything. We could still be looking at, as the map starts, the game starts on a specific map, it could still be linear, but with all the different aspects of Levolution, you can, one of the clips I saw, you can drop, this overhang. I forget what the exact term of it. There's actual like a term for it, and I can't remember it. But anyway, it's like an overhang on the storefront. So kind of like keep all your customers and shoppers walking out front from protected from the elements. And one guy hits it with a grenade, and it swings down on one end, so it's a ramp. So now you can get up and walk along the front of that, and it just creates a whole different path, avenue to travel to get from point A to point B. And I think that's going to be huge for how these maps play out. And we're going to see a lot less of these stalemates and choke points and spawn traps that we get in some of the maps like on Battlefield 3 right now.
Right. It would make defending be a more widespread heads-up type activity where you need to be conscious of where these people could be coming from, as opposed to just confidently knowing that there's only one way they can come at you. Even the first set of MCOMs on Domovan Peak is kind of like, well, they got to come down off the hill, so we'll just hang out here. But I don't even know how you could levolutionize that part of the map. But I know what you're saying. Like, you want to have options. If you do ever feel pinned down, you want to have that extra option that you can open up and exploit if you need to.
Yep. That's again, that's one of the things that it can be really, really trying with Battlefield 3, and this is kind of how I'm looking at it right now. Battlefield 3 is kind of like a King of the Hill type game, where there are just a fair share of maps that one team does really, really well pretty early, and they get on top of the hill. And, if you know from when it comes to fighting, whoever holds the elevated position is king of the hill. They're always going to win out because they have this stronger defensive standpoint. And I can see Battlefield 4, thanks to Levolution, being more tug of war, where it's really evenly matched and the stronger team will be the winners. It won't be decided by who gets up on top of the hill. It's just going to be who is a stronger team, and I like that. I think it's going to bring back the element of skill and less so much perfect timing and perfect positioning to lead to spawn trapping.
And I think, for the most part, what we've been talking about in this video so far is based around Rush, where it's attackers, defenders coming from fixed directions.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think concerning, because those problems aren't necessarily there when it comes to being the king of the hill and holding the high ground when it comes to Conquest, because for the most part those maps are much more triangular, if not square or pentangular, depending on what how many different bases there are. There's literally dozens of different ways you can approach every other base because it's more wide open. And I think Battlefield 3 did a really good job with the maps in Conquest mode. However, there was a few, particularly in some of the expansions like Endgame and Aftermath. Aftermath was good. Armored Kill. It felt like Bad Company 2 again, because Bad Company 2 is where was the most popular Battlefield that gave the worst impression to non-Battlefield players, because the maps were just so massive that's where all those bad talks about running for a quarter mile and then getting shot came from, was Bad Company maps. And Battlefield 3 scrunched it down a little bit, so it felt at least a little bit more contained and a little more capable to move from spot to spot. But then some of those maps that I was talking about on those expansions were just too big. So I'd like to see in Battlefield 4, it's not so much Levolution based, it's more just overall boundaries based. I want to see everything just that much tighter and less reliable on single or double person quick vehicles, like light vehicles and stuff like that. I don't think using dirt bikes and quad bikes is an acceptable fix for having 64 square miles of just barren land.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how it felt like to me. Was you get on some of these bigger maps. Armored Shield is one of them. That one's pretty wide open. And then Bandahar Desert. And again, when you're playing a game like Rush or even Conquest, if you choose your deployment, you've got a long way to go, and it feels like they did that intentionally just so they could justify throwing in specific vehicles, so that they had a purpose, like the dirt bike. It's like, okay, we have this dirt bike.
Yeah.
What do we do? And why don't we just back up the spawn, way the fuck back, so they if they want to get there fast, they have to drive them.
That's actually a good point we sort of just stumbled upon when you were talking there. Like, literally the boats played no role in Battlefield 3. And maybe it's just because we've been seeing so much of the water map with Battlefield 4, but it looks like boats are actually like a huge tool that are going to be worthwhile to acquire and then stay in, as opposed to just taking it from the damn aircraft carrier and hitting the beach.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there was that one map. I'm sorry, I totally forgot if you said it. I got distracted. My dad called me. It is that one map that we saw some gameplay from where it looks like they breached a dam and now the whole city is flooded. And you see the guy in the boat tearing ass down the streets, like in between buildings, and the guy up front freaking chug-a-lugging along, just like laying down suppressor fire.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's awesome. Now we actually have a purpose to using these boats where the map is centered around water warfare. And then again, Parasol Storm, you know, we've got all that, those little islands dotted around, so you can use the boats to get around.
Even Noshar had... Noshar Rush has a strategic, a canal, lo and behold, hence the name, that will bring you up alongside every single set of MCOMs, and people never use it.
Right.
So it would be sweet to, like, it's going to be a tough balance for them to find, like, we don't want to be swimming all the time, but at the same time, these maps can get crazy if they pull it off the right way.
Agreed.
So I think that sums up what, I mean, we barely even breached the topic of what could be in Battlefield 4 maps, but we just wanted to get some of our ideas out there. So if you guys have any ideas or anything that you noticed in any of the footage that you've watched, feel free to let us know in the comments down below. And unless Snoop has anything else to add, I think that might wrap it up for this video.
Nope, that'll do it.
Alright guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.